White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was forced to pivot yesterday when reporters questioned her on President Biden's denouncement of MAGA Republicans. Let's watch that.
The president thinks that there is an extremist threat to our democracy. The president has been clear as he can be on that particular piece when we talk about a democracy, when we talk about our freedoms. The way that he sees is the MAGA Republicans are the most energized part of the Republican Party. This is an extreme threat to our democracy, to our freedom, to our rights.
Friend of the show, Philip Wegman, pressed Jean-Pierre on Biden's suggestion that Republican voters pose a threat to democracy.
When the president is talking about preserving the soul of the nation and his threats to democracy, he's not referring to those individuals. He's talking about Republican leadership.
Well, let me be very clear. It's not just Republican leadership. It's not just that blanket, right? He is talking about an extreme portion, an extreme part of the party.
Love Philip Wegman, best oppositional White House reporter there is. The press secretary's answers are a change in tone from what the president had to say to voters Tuesday during the unveiling of his Safer American plan.
For those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
Okay, I take the point that if you can make a critique of leadership that's separate and apart from a critique of the average Republican voter or Republicans across the board or even many Republicans who are in leadership but aren't quote unquote MAGA Republicans. If you want to make that distinction, you cannot coin the term MAGA Republicans because MAGA was the slogan of the President of the United States of America, which half of the voting public voted for. If you wanted to make a more discrete criticism of a more right-wing fringe aspect of the party, do that. But you really stepped in it if you want to call all MAGA-affiliated people a threat to American democracy.
Yeah, it's just a terrible losing tactic. It speaks to, I don't think it's as extreme or as kind of arrogant the way she framed it, Hillary Clinton, obviously, with the basket of deplorables comment, where she said, and what she actually said, if you go back and look at that comment, was that she was referring to not half of the country, but half of Trump's supporters and voters. She said half of those people are irredeemable, essentially. And that's a large swath of the country you're cutting off entirely. That's not it. Tactically, that's not what you should say. That's not what you're supposed to say. And not that I care about giving free advice to Democratic figures, but say they've been lied to and misled by Trump. That he is tricking them and fooling them, and he's not doing what they want. He's not making their lives better, but he's convinced them that he will make their lives better, and they've been tricked. Like, that's what you got to say. That's what Republicans do not criticize Democratic voters. They say, they harshly, they go way overboard on when they say Democrats, they mean Democratic politicians.
Okay, but we did just run through a clip yesterday of Ted Cruz talking about how dumb bong-smoking baristas might actually vote because Biden did something policy-wise. And I take your point. He didn't say Democratic baristas, but I do think there's they knock
elite liberal.
Baristas are elites now?
Not socially very to the left, woke type people.
Sure.
They are a punching bag, unfair, more than they deserve. But they're not. They want to win over. They know they're not winning those people. They want to win over Democrats who are, just.
Yeah. And another way to go about doing this is, to say, look, Democrats hate doing this, but Donald Trump said a lot of true things as he was diagnosing the problems in America. Things that other establishment actors in both parties were unwilling to say because they were in Congress voting for those policies at the time. They voted for the trade policies that sent jobs overseas. They voted for a lot of the economic policies that caused Americans to hurt.
They voted for the Iraq War.
They voted for the Iraq War. Excellent point. And Donald Trump was able to come in as an outsider and call all that stuff out. Barack Obama was also able to come in as a relative newcomer to Congress, not have any of that dirt on him and call that stuff out. Now, both of those men, I would argue, reneged on their promises.
A lot of
and
them.
did not fulfill their obligation to the American people. But that's the message. That's what you say. And you don't say that people were dumb for falling for it, or that they were hoodwinked and too stupid to think for themselves, but that a promise was made and these men didn't follow through. And so then you articulate the reasons why you think you will be able to deliver differently than they will. I think getting money out of politics, not taking big corporate PAC money, all of those other kinds of things have a lot to do with whether or not you actually follow through on your promises once you're in office. Also, we've been having this conversation about whether operating outside of the two-party system gives people more freedom to follow through and work for Americans as opposed to the DNC and the RNC and all of the corporate dollars that are mixed up in there. But whatever it is, what you don't do is say that a huge portion of the American people are irredeemable. It's not a morally appropriate judgment to make for someone who wants to be in charge of all of those lives.
Yeah. Is it too... It's not too early to say this, right? Karine Jean-Pierre is not, I don't think, as effective a
we haven't been saying that.
as her predecessor.
Yeah, she seems like a very lovely person.
Nothing against her personally, but she's a little outmatched in this role.
I think it requires a bit more thinking and understanding the valence of the kinds of questions that you're getting,
right,
than simply memorizing answers off of a book before the fact. You have to have a sufficient awareness of what your kind of ideological opponents are trying to get out of you, the story that they're anticipating, and to be able to answer questions in a way that don't seem defensive, but which also seem honest, and that are as honest as you're able to be, obviously representing an administration that's not you and your personal instincts. It's a very difficult job. It's not one that I would have wanted in this context, because unless you are largely aligned with the principle, you are going to be in a position where you feel like you have to be dishonest.
I can't imagine doing it. It's really a job for a propagandist.
Yeah,
it's your job to whatever is going on to spin it as good. And
Jen Psaki was a propagandist. Didn't she work for a defense company before she got this job?
But Karine Jean-Pierre should have an easier job than Jen Psaki, because things are going better for Biden right now. I mean, we're talking about that on the show a lot, and we're going to talk about this another example of the Sarah Palin loss in just a minute, about another example of wheels kind of falling off for Republicans. This massive red wave that's supposed to take place, guaranteed to have the House, maybe going to finally take back the Senate. Everyone dissatisfied with everything Biden's doing. You know what? It doesn't look like that anymore. And so she should have an easier time touting the administration's successes. So it is a little bit of unforced errors.
In her defense, she does have to contend with Joe Biden going out and saying things. I think the original statement is the fundamental problem here. It is the fact that Joe Biden went out there and said that MAGA-Republicans are a threat to our democracy.
Right.
Without consulting with Biden, it's hard to spin.
So it's clear that media figures, kind of media, Democratic voices, love the whole threat to democracy framing. I mean, like CNN and MSNBC are obsessed with it. The Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. They all want it to be about how democracy is under siege, which, regardless of if that's true or not, does not, just from speaking to what people care about. Look, I know that animates, the people who watch CNN and MSNBC, and I'm not saying
but
they're not important issues.
Not anymore.
Because
you can't be at a 10
people
all the time.
Yeah, you can't.
People's adrenal glands blow out.
Yeah.
We've been told we are in a state of heightened emergency for like 6 years now. Mm-hmm. Trump is the end of America. Trump is the end of the world. Trump is the end of democracy. There actually is the 1/6 moment, which doesn't look great. Optical disaster for Republicans.
Really bad.
But you've already been telling people that it was disaster time forever. And so you're trying to continue that narrative, even though we don't have people literally outside the Capitol right now burning, burning down the ramparts or whatever.
They seize on every news, which, there should be a probe and investigation to what happened at Mar-a-Lago with the boxes and the documents and everything.
But a photograph of the documents on the ground has a
wow!
News
now
cycle.
It's it. Now we've got him. Yeah.
And it is ridiculous. And look, I say this: if Democrats want to not seem like the boy who cried wolf, if they want their good moments to hit or their takedowns of the conservatives to hit, you have to be more judicious. And that includes not using overly broad language like MAGA-Republicans are a threat to our democracy.
January 6th was the wolf. Fair enough. Everyone had as much right to be really upset about that, because that was crazy.
It was wild.
On a historical scale, really crazy. But so many people weren't listening because they'd already heard. He'd already been impeached once.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we'll have more of this to discuss coming up next. Stay with us.